Hey guys, Nate from Performance Partout. I wanted to go through one of the data logs, or actually all three of the data logs from our last night at the track, which was June 7th. We made some progress with the race car, got it to run a couple 10-0s at like 137 to 138 miles an hour. And we're going to go through the data logs and see what we can learn and see what we can change to improve it for next week. So let's dig in here. So I've already arranged a bunch of different pages in the data log viewer. So the first thing I want to look at is launch. All three runs, basically I changed the launch RPM from, from 42 and a half, 42, 43 and a half, and 4,500 RPM was really the only major changes between the three runs. And oh, come on, go away, Facebook. The last two runs were at 40 pounds of boost target, and I think the first two were at 36, 38, and then the last run was 40, turning the boost up 2 psi target per run. So we'll look at that later. So let's go at the launch RPM. Changing the three launch RPM settings, which these are on a rotary trim knob on the dash for quick, easy change. You can see that the engine sits on a rev limiter on the converter in first gear. And then when it launches, the converter flashes up to roughly 5,000 RPM, but the boost level doesn't change. We sit at 20 pounds of boost, almost exactly, the whole time that it's on the auxiliary rev limiter. Then as soon as this brake switch kicks off, boost goes up to 21, 22, 23, 24. The boost is not raising. So we have an issue with the boost control in first gear that we're going nearly, that's a full second to here. We're going like 1.5 full seconds, which is basically through the 60 foot. It's 60 footed 1.50 all three runs at all three launch RPMs. The launch RPM didn't seem to improve the 60 foot very much because we're basically flashing the converter to the same RPM each time. So we need to raise the boost here. We need the boost to go. We don't hit our target boost level. We don't even hit it at all in first gear, but we were going to 36 to 37 pounds of boost in first gear. And we were getting there at, 7,700 RPM, 7,200 RPM. Yeah, 7,000 plus RPM. So we want the boost control to just, as soon as we let go of the brake, we want boost to come right up. That'll improve the 60 foot a ton. So let's go into the software and see what's going on. Well, I've already diagnosed this. So this is what's going on. We basically drop the brake. This is only the fourth run on this log. We drop the brake at 4,500 RPM. The boost control target is only 19 psi, and we're actually seeing 20.3. You can see the boost control is no output at all, 0. Then all through first gear, we don't start spool until there. The light blue is boost control in this graph. We're following this target curve. It just kind of lays there. And then at, 5,300 RPM to 6,400 RPM, the duty cycle cranks up, and then we're in control from there on. So we need to raise the target at 5,300 and less. So we'll go into the software. This is the base map that was in the car, or not the base map, but this was the map that was in the car for that last run. So let's go to the closed loop target pressure. And yep, this is exactly what's going on. We were on knob position number 9 on the last run for targeting 40 pounds of boost, basically from 6,000 RPM up. All of first gear, second gear, third gear, when it's up, it's on 40 pounds. But we had 25 at 25 psi is the target and 22 psi is the target. So we want to crank these up. So let's put that to 35. Let's put 5,000 RPM to 30. Let's go 25 at 4,500 RPM. That's roughly where we had the launch rev limiter. I don't really want to increase the boost too much when we're on the rev limiter. I want to bring it up a little bit, but not a ton. So let's put 25 there for now. And then 4,000 and 3,500 are sort of irrelevant because I imagine no matter what the boost control duty cycle is there, the amount of boost we make on the rev limiter is going to be, or below the rev limiter is going to be mostly determined by the amount of nitrous we spray at it. So let's take these 3 lines, copy, paste, paste, paste for all of the higher settings. The way I want to base my boost control map is so that each of these 1 through 12 on the left-hand side are the rotary trim knob position on the dashboard. So I kind of want to set these so that on position 1, we have very not aggressive boost control, like effectively no boost control. And then from 2 through 12, we want to go in varying degrees of aggressiveness. Obviously, if I'm setting the target boost to 40 pounds, this is I'm looking to make pretty much maximum power that this turbo can make. If I'm only setting the boost to 28 as the target, the reason I would set the boost down to 28 is I'm trying to reduce the wear and tear on the motor. Say I'm running against an opposing car in round 1 that I know ran a 13 or a 12 or something like that. And I don't need full power to beat them, so there's no reason to wear and tear on the equipment. So in those situations is where we know the boost target at 5,000 and 5,500 is going to determine how soon the turbo spools up within the 60 foot. How soon we get to max boost pretty much determines max torque, and max torque in first gear determines when the driveline breaks or how much wear and tear we're putting on the transfer case, the drive shaft, and the axles. So I'm going to say I'm going to blend this table down a little bit and just say we're going to go to like 32, 30, 28. Let's go down in 2 PSI increments until we get to where we're matching. Go to 24 for 30 or 25 for 30, and let's just leave it at 25. Because honestly, that cut, only having 22 to 25 pounds of boost through the 60 foot, the car came out nice and soft. It still cut a 150. It's still fast enough to qualify at any IFO event for the most part. So there's really no reason to make it any more aggressive at our lower knob settings. So let's take this one to 28, 26, 24, and leave it at 22. We'll go to 24, 22, 20. We'll leave it alone. So now we've just added some additional boost pressure to our positions of like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, where we're targeting 32, 34, 36 pounds of boost at peak. So this should take care of our spool up now. If we're going to run the next run at the 40 PSI target, which is what my plan is, we should see 30 to 35 pounds of boost in first gear. And by getting the turbo spooled up about 1,000 RPM earlier, it will actually enable it to hit the 40 PSI target in first gear, where on the last run, we didn't even see 36 or 37. So that's what we're going to do for launch boost control. The boost control on down track, this is in third gear. We had a bit over the target. This pink line is the target of 40. We hit 41. So we can take a tiny, tiny little bit of base duty cycle out at 6,700 RPM or lower. We're right on the target around 7,000 RPM. At 8,000 RPM, we are at 38. The boost pressure is falling off with RPM. So we need to add some duty cycle at 8,000 RPM. And then obviously we're falling off even more at the top. And we're at 37 by the traps at 8,400 RPM for like 138 mile an hour trap speed. So we want to crank up the duty cycle at 8,000 and 7,000 RPM, or excuse me, at 9,000 and 8,000 RPM. So go back into the software, closed loop base duty cycle for 40. So let's go up 10% on this. Let's go to 58. Let's take the 8,000 and put that at 55, 53. The 7,000 was right about at the target, and we can actually take a tiny little bit out of the 6,000 just to, let's go down to 33 here. This might help the little bit of spike we get after the gear change, which it's not the end of the world. It's literally 1 PSI, but whatever. We can try to make this nice and smooth and even. So on to the next thing. We have an EGT discrepancy. These graphs are, this is cylinder 1. The top graph is cylinder 1 for run 2, 3, and 4, and they were very similar. We raised the target air-fuel ratio from 11.5 to 11.8 on gasoline scale. We're running pump E85. And prior to this run, the last time at the track, we were only seeing about 130 mile an hour trap speeds, and the EGT was dropping off hardcore, starting from the middle of second gear. Now it looks like by leaning out the air-fuel ratio, we're getting into third gear before we start seeing the same thing where the EGTs are dropping. And this is cylinder 2. It's dropped on all 3 runs. We're down in the 1200, 1300 degree at the traps, where we peak at high 15s, 1600 in top of second gear. So we think we're actually fouling the plugs, like wetting the plugs down, and we're losing cylinder 2 up at the top. Cylinder 3 looks like it runs clean all the way to the end on 2 runs. On run 3, run 3, we had a little bit of jaggedness at the end where we might have started to lose this cylinder at the end. And on cylinder 4, we ran clean to the traps on the first run, and then looks like we dropped cylinder 4 at the top. The car ran 112 and 113 mile an hour at the 8th, but only 138, 137 up top. So this does seem like the 8th mile would be about ballpark here, like the 2-3 shift, and then into third gear is a little bit where the 8th mile trap, or where the 8th mile marker is on the track. So it looks like we're running on all 4 cylinders for about the same level. We're running on all 4 cylinders to the 8th mile, and then the wheels come off on third gear. So we want to take some fuel out again, and this graph shows the yellow is wideband, blue is the target air-fuel ratio. As you can see, we had it at 11.8 target. We're pretty much on it. But it starts to lean out at the top of third gear. And my suspicion is not that this is actually the air-fuel ratio leaning out. We have a misfire. One of those cylinders is going out, and we're just pushing raw fuel and oxygen through the exhaust, which the O2 sensor picks up and reads as a leaner mixture. When in reality, we might actually be so rich that we're wetting the plug and dropping a cylinder. And that's just not combusted oxygen going past the O2 sensor, making it leaner. Then when the closed loop O2 control in the ECU senses that sees the wideband leaner than the target, it just keeps adding in more and more fuel. So we can get the car in, or get the ECU into a vicious cycle where our initial settings are too rich. It makes it misfire. The misfire makes the ECU think it's too lean. It adds more fuel in, which exasperates the rich condition. So if we can get it to not misfire from the get-go, that sort of solves our problem. So I'm going to go into the software. This is our base VE map, and we're fairly consistent at the top from the 7,500 RPM. We're on this load row. We're basically running the car down the track in these cells at the 40 pounds. And actually, we kind of dipped down to here because the boost is dropping. So these are the cells we need to work with. But really, we need to change the target for closed loop control, because we have closed loop enabled on this. As the car's going down the track, as I said, if the ECU sees the wideband reading leaner than the target air-fuel ratio, it's just going to keep adding in more fuel. So we're going to take this last cell. This graph actually needs to be expanded. So let's expand the axis. Our top axis is manifold pressure, and it's only going to 29. And as you can see, we're not really using all the cells. So let's put these in and let's make them match our boost targets. So we're going to go 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50. All right, I don't even think this turbo is going to be capable of making 50 pounds of boost, but we'll see. If we ever get there, we ever get there. So let's take we were targeting 40, so let's go from 50 pounds of boost down to 38, and from 6,000 RPM up, let's change the not 20. Let's not do 20. Let's target 12.0, lean it out a smidge, and then I actually want to do the correction for fuel. Because we have such a discrepancy where cylinder 3 This one's 3. Actually runs clean almost every run. It might only be flooding out at 8,500 RPM, but these cylinders start dropping. 4 starts dropping at 8,000. Cylinder 2 starts getting weird at, oh, we don't have an RPM trace on this. Let me get an RPM trace. Okay. We start dropping out at 76, and cylinder 1 also starts dropping right around the same RPM, 7,600 RPM. So 7,500 RPM and up, I want to start pulling out fuel out of every cylinder except for 3. So I think the way I want to do this is go into our individual cylinder corrections. And these are, okay, I need to change these, change the x-axis or the axis again, because we don't really care what, we're not going to make adjustments via AGT at 1,000 RPM. So let's leave, let's just see about if we go 9,500, 9,000. We're going to have to shift this, I think, 8,500, 8,000, 7,500. Yeah, we're going to run out of load rows. So let's go 9,200, 9,201. This is kind of weird how you have to set this up. Maybe it's faster to just blank them all and then start over. So let's say we want to start our corrections at 4,500, and then let's go 500 RPM increments, 6,000, 6,500. Hi, dear. My wife is messaging me. 8,000, 8,500, 9,000, 9,500, 10,000. Okay, so we're using 12 cells. So we've expanded this a little bit. And again, I should have looked at that when I was up here. We can start making these. We have 16 cells to work with. So let's go 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48. That's all we're going to get to. Okay, so now we want to take these axes, save them, and we're going to put this as manifold pressure 16 points for sil correct. Oh, seriously. No, we can't put a quotation mark. And then we're going to save this one as RPM 12.4 cylinder correct. Because now we actually have to go through and make each of these cylinder corrections use the same axis. So let's go open manifold pressure for cylinder correction 16 points. Let's go RPM. RPM for cylinder correction axis 2. Apply. Okay, now we've expanded this table. I'm going to do the same thing for 3 and 4, and then I'm going to take a little bit of fuel out of each one. I'm not going to do it on camera because this is kind of tedious, but I will adjust and pull out a little bit of fuel at the 40 PSI. And what did we say? From 7,500 RPM up. So I'm going to make a change similar to, like, maybe I'm going to take 2% out of cylinder 2, cylinder 1. Cylinder 2 has a lot of fuel. That's the one that seems to break up and drop more consistently. So maybe I'll take like 4% out of this cylinder, and then we'll go from there. And I'm not going to take anything out of 3, and I am going to take a little bit out of 4. So I will do that off camera. This is our EGT trace from all 4 cylinders on the same graph from the last run. You can see cylinder 2 is the bold one. That's the one that's significantly cooler and dropping off. So cylinder 2, we actually want to start pulling fuel as early as 6,700 RPM. And then these 3 seem to follow each other. Cylinders 1, 3, and 4 seem to stay together until 8,000 RPM. So I'm going to go back and make the cylinder corrections a little bit more exact, but we'll do that. The next thing I want to change is generic table output 1 and 2 is shifting the transmission from first to second gear. That's that green line. And this blue line down is the 2 to 3 shift. Our 2 to 3 shift only revs the engine to 8,700 RPM. First gear, we got to 92. And I think I had the rev limiter set at 94. So if my memory serves me correct, we bumped the rev limiter a couple times in first gear. So I think I'm going to go into the tuning software and go down to generic output for trans. And yeah, we had this shifting at 36 miles an hour. I'm going to back this down to 34. Change them to zeros. Zeros is solenoid off. Ones is solenoid on. So for first gear, we want both solenoids on. We're going to shut that solenoid off at 3,400 RPM, or excuse me, 34 miles an hour to make the 1-2 shift a little earlier, make sure we don't bump the rev limiter. And third gear, excuse me, we have the 2-3 shift occurring at 89 miles an hour, and we need to expand this map because you need a 0 to make it shift, and we're out of positions. Obviously, we're not shifting down here at 81, 82, 83 miles an hour. So we're going to adjust this to say, I think a realistic number is like 95 miles an hour, 94, 93, 92, 91, 90, 89, 88. And now our shift point is 87, 86. Let's just leave these alone for now. Anything below the 2-3 shift points sort of irrelevant. We don't really care about this. We just need a 0 to a 9 mile an hour and a 0 mile an hour spot so that it will kick back into first gear to put around in the pits and load the car in the trailer. But basically, at all conditions that you're under throttle, you want this solenoid on until you're 88 miles an hour, until you're shifting. So we want to bring this one up to, let's go up to 90 miles an hour, and we'll see where that gets us. The shift point's kind of tricky because you have to account for the delay in the trans that, you know, the ECU commanded the trans to shift at 8,500 RPM, but we got up to 87 and change before it actually made the gear change. So maybe that'll get us an extra 100 RPM or two. We pulled down the number 1. So we've addressed the spool in first gear. We've addressed the EGT discrepancy and how we're going to work on that. We've addressed the target lambda, and we've expanded that map. Another thing we wanted to do, that this was suggested to me by the Haltech guys, that the boost control long-term trim, my base map only went to 29. So we want to expand this map so that we're going to allow, you only have 8 spots. So we don't care about boost control at 8, 11, 14. So let's rearrange these and go, let's say 46 or 40. Yeah, let's go 46, 44, 40, 38, 36, 34, 32, and 30. And actually, I'm going to change this to 42 and 44 because realistically, I don't think we're running 46 pounds of boost anytime the next few weeks. So then let's zero this table out because basically this table is the closed loop corrections long-term trim for boost control. And what we manually did before about trying to get the boost control to be the actual boost to hit the target evenly at all RPM, this is basically what we've done already. Like we added some at 9,000 and 8,000 and 4,000 was spot on. So we're just going to zero this table out and we'll save that. And then the next time we run the car, the ECU will be more capable of storing its long-term changes to boost control so that we can apply this to the base map automatically and not have to manually go in and make decisions. So that's boost control. We've addressed the shift RPM. We've addressed the target lambda. Timing advance. I did add each run. I added 2 degrees after the first run, and on the third run, I added 3 degrees. This adds it everywhere. Now, it picked up 2 miles an hour from 2 degrees of timing and a little bit of boost, and it picked up another 1.5 miles going to the third run up to 38 and change, 138 and change from adding 1 more degree and another roughly 1 pound of boost. Didn't really hold it. So where was that timing map? Launch control. This is where it caused an issue. You can see here, say in first gear where we're up on boost at high RPM, we had a timing change of 16 on the first run, 18 and 20. But on the converter, on the rev limiter, it also increased our timing on the converter, which makes the car more likely to pull through the brakes. So we had 4, 6, and 8.5. So we want to get rid of that overall correction and apply that timing to the base map. So we're going to take this down to 0. Okay, come on. And then we're going to go our base timing map. We were running in the 40 PSI load row. We don't really care about 5,000 RPM or under, so let's just advance the timing from 6,000 RPM up. And we're going to go, we added 3 degrees on the last run, so I'm going to put in 2. And then at 38 pounds of boost, which would have been the first run, I'm going to put in 1 degree. And then we're going to leave it alone. And as far as this is just to basically make sure that my first run next time, if we're going to target 40 pounds of boost, we're running the same exact timing. So we have a back-to-back comparison from the last run to the last run last Friday to the first run this Friday. So we're consistent. But realistically, the ignition timing needs to be tuned on the dyno, and that's kind of a project for another day. Maybe next week we'll get the car to the dyno and sweep the timing at a couple different boost levels, and then we can fill in this map with actual maximum power timing. But for right now, we're just kind of playing with it. So we've done timing advance. I'm going to go back and look at the prior runs and work on the boost control from 38 and 36 PSI targets from run 2 and run 3. But it's most likely going to be the same thing as the same changes we made to boost control for 40 PSI, where we adjusted the base duty cycle at 40 to basically pump up 9,000 and 8,000, leave 7,000 alone, and then take a little bit away here. It's going to be the same changes for 36 and 38, so I'll make those later. All right, so this is the map we're going to put in the car for the start of the next run, and keep watching for Friday. We're supposed to go to Island tomorrow night and make some hits. So hopefully this results in a 135 to 145 60 foot, and we get the ET back in the high 9s, and maybe leaning it out if we can keep it running on all 4 cylinders all the way to the traps. 140 plus, that's the goal. And obviously drive it back on the trailer. Take it easy, guys.